With this here, this ain't about being flashy. This is game day, son. It's only about one thing. Getting that W. That's the only thing that matters right now. Boy, are you ready?
The past is the past, you know? It's a new day, bro. My day. Gotta do it now.
All right, guys, back for another podcast, another Friday podcast, previewing all of the Week 15 games coming up, and obviously recapping last night's Chargers-Broncos game. Matt and I also have some, obviously, our let's talk about flex section going on a little bit later. And I just got to warn everybody before we get into this podcast, there's going to be a lot of Rob Druin bashing in this. Some of his rankings, just don't even look at his rankings this week because they're just a little crazy. Just don't even look at those rankings. It's kind of sad. Matt, have you taken a look at Rob's rankings this week?
I hadn't even seen them. No.
You need to take a look. It is. If you want a good laugh, just go take a look at Rob's rankings. It's that bad.
Wow.
But let's jump into the Thursday night game here. Chargers and Broncos. You know, if you told me you picked San Diego to win this game, you know, my friend, would show you a liar. It was just amazing, crazy game here that the Chargers actually pulled this off in Denver last night. But, Matt, I mean, I want you to kind of give me some kudos here. Tuesday I talked about how I thought Ryan Matthews was being a little undervalued, and I put him in my top 10 running backs this week. Another 30 touches for him in this game, 128 total yards and a touchdown. You know, next week he gets Oakland in San Diego. Pretty sure he's going to crack my top 12 probably again. And, you know, despite the injury concerns you have with Ryan Matthews, he hasn't missed a game this year because of injury. You know, what are your thoughts about Ryan Matthews and his performance last night?
Yeah, he looked great. You know, and he's a guy that when you watch him play, he passes the eye test, I like to say. You know, he's a talented guy who looks like he's got it all. And this year he's putting it together, you know, quite well. He's been a very good running back too. If you stuck with him and believed in him throughout the year, he's actually been very consistent. Not a guy that's giving you those, you know, 25, 30-point games, but you know, you want 10 points from Ryan Matthews. He's been pretty solid at getting you that at least. So, like what I'm seeing, Marcus. What do you think about him next year?
I was just going to say, I liked him a lot going into this year, and I'm going to probably like him probably a little bit more next year, seeing that he made it through, or hopefully will make it through a full season healthy.
Yeah, don't speak too soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is Ryan Matthews we're talking about. You know, he could hurt himself walking into the stadium, you know, next week. But, you know, he's a guy that I talked about a lot in the preseason and took in way too many leagues, I probably think. You know, he was a 4th, 5th round guy that I loved because you kind of, you know, I mentioned in the preseason, he kind of had that talent. You knew he always had that talent, just couldn't stay healthy, and finally stays healthy this year. So really putting it together. Denver side of the ball, though, Matt, you know, that offense did not look good. It seemed like San Diego kind of figured them out. You know, keep Peyton Manning off the field is kind of, I mean, it's kind of obvious to say, but grind it out, running the ball, chew up a lot of, you know, time of possession, and keep Manning off the field, and that at least keeps you close in the game. But their offense just didn't look good. You know, Moreno, just 55 total yards. Demaryius Thomas, 45 yards receiving. Decker, 42 yards. You know, Orange Julius gets the touchdown, but only 49 receiving yards. Surprisingly, Andre Caldwell, not only leads the team in receiving yards and receptions, but also targets. You know, are you worried about the Denver offense a little bit here, slowing up as we get through the fantasy playoffs?
You know, I feel guilty, actually. I really should have known. As you know, I have Demaryius. I have Noshawn in my home teams, and this was my first week of the playoffs. So, of course, have your second worst game of the year, Noshawn, and you might as well have your worst game of the year, Demaryius. Probably could have guaranteed you that and helped everyone out a little bit by telling you to sit him. But, you know, I'm not worried about it. You know, what an idiot on that punt. I think it was the third quarter. The guy lines up in the neutral zone.
Yeah.
You know, the next drive, I mean, the continuing of that drive ends up being another 7 minutes, and really took the ball out of Peyton's hands. The time of possession was killer, and it's not something you see three and outs in a row. I don't know how many times you saw that, like Mayock was saying. I don't know if you've ever seen that from a Peyton Manning offense. I think this was just a perfect storm of what none of us really expected would happen, but everything going wrong. that play is huge if you think about it. That was a 7-minute drive they went on, killed over half of a quarter because you line up in the neutral zone. You actually saw Coach Fox slip something like idiot or stupid, I think it was. After it happened, it was funny to see, and I'm going to chalk this up as a bad luck. I hope you get by this week because I'm still counting on them next week, all of them.
Yeah, it's still a powerhouse offense. I mean, even in this game and a down game for Peyton Manning, still has 2 passing touchdowns. But Matt, to your point, definitely not a good start for you in your fantasy playoffs there after having a first-round bye.
You know what? I think the Caldwell thing was more of just Peyton takes what defenses give you. You saw a lot of dump downs to the running backs, the Caldwells. I don't think they respected him. Kind of just let him run around free. So good game plan, I think.
Yeah, and one last thing here. I was one of those guys that lost Gronk last week and needed obviously to fill in a tight end. Tight ends on my waiver wire were guys like Jared Cook, Brandon Myers, Gresham, Hausler, Eifert. I opted to go a little unorthodox here and go out of the box, and I took Jacob Tamme, figuring, last week he played a lot in the slot when Welker got injured, and that obviously didn't go exactly as I planned. Just 1 catch, 9 yards on 2 targets. I probably should. I probably was looking way too much into that when I did that, but not somebody obviously you can count on. So Week 15 games here, Matt, still yet to be played. Redskins, Falcons, obviously the big news here, RG3 being shut down for the season. While he still hasn't been placed on that non-injury IR, all signs obviously point to him not playing again this season, him openly telling everybody. Now the Falcons do offer a great matchup in this game throwing the ball, but how do you think Kirk Cousins will affect guys like Pierre Garçon?
I don't think it really negatively affects him. Obviously, Griffin had really been trying to get the ball to Pierre. The numbers haven't been there. The receptions have, and the targets, but the big numbers haven't really been there. So, Robert hasn't been playing great recently. That whole offense has been anemic. So I think Kirk maybe will breathe a little life into him. And I don't think it can really negatively affect him, considering the way things have been lately. There's nowhere to go but up, really.
Yeah. There's two things here, 2 trains of thought, I guess. One, that they maybe they lean a little bit more on Alfred Morris in this game, kind of keep the pressure off of Kirk Cousins. Or option 2, what could possibly happen as well is Shanahan wants to prove his point and really wants to showcase Cousins and really just lets him air it out. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of those 2, happen. It's such other ends of the spectrum. It's going to be one or the other, probably no comfortable medium, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Matt, obviously the other big news here for the Redskins, Jordan Reed shut down for the season because of his concussion issues. Does this affect your opinion of him for next year?
No, I think it's just hey, here's an organization that certainly is mailing it in. I think they want to see what they have in Kirk just because, young guy, why not? It's a good chance for Kirk to try to show his stuff too. But also, I think Reed he's a guy that's also important to the future. And if you're going to say we need to shut down Robert Griffin, Reed is probably one to do as well, a young player who is vital to the future. So obviously, I guess still having some concerns with little headaches and things like that. It's safe to just shut him down and get him ready for next year. What's the point in trying to win these next few games? I think that's kind of what's being thought around that organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a lost season for the Redskins. There's not much to be had now. Nothing worth risking, obviously.
Yeah.
And Matt, I talked about Alfred Morris a second ago. You're an Alfred Morris owner. 27th ranked run defense from the Falcons here. We talked about him on Tuesday, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I had him ranked 5th this week. I just think great, basically they're going to lean on him more. Great matchup for him. Rob has him ranked at 16th. I just can't even imagine what he's thinking.
Think about it, Marcus. I think he is going to be one of the hardest guys to rank this week. I honestly think that because, Alfred's a good player, but the way things have been going in Washington, there's so much turmoil. Who really knows? So I think he is a guy that isn't surprising to see a guy at 5 and a guy at 16. You can look at it like you said, there's 2 trains of thought. I think Rob's probably on the other side. I think you and I are more on they're going to lean on Alfred and try to, give the young rookie or young quarterback a little bit less pressure, but it could go both ways. Who knows?
Yeah, I just think they lean on him a lot here, at least in the beginning of the game. He gets a lot of work. Falcons side, don't really want to spend a lot of time on the Falcons side. The Redskins are a mess, and like we said, phoned in the season. You're starting all your Falcons here. You're starting Matt Ryan. You're starting Steven Jackson, Roddy, Douglas, Gonzo. you're starting all those guys. Not really too much to be had there. Terrible defense.
Just keep an eye on Roddy. I know he's been kind of banged up in practice again this week. Everyone, including me, was getting excited. Oh, he's getting healthy. Well, here he is again. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I think he's playing.
Yeah. Bears and Browns. Jay Cutler back at quarterback for the Bears. I know the cookie cutter analysis here is this really helps Marshall, kind of downgrades Alshon a little bit. You still like both. This analysis has been beaten to death already by many people all throughout the fantasy industry, so I don't think we really need to spend too much time on how this affects Marshall and Alshon. But what I'm worried about here is the potential for a flare-up of Cutler's injury. We've seen it before in games, and there could be the chance that he still underperforms compared to how McCown's been playing. Matt, you really opened my eyes to Cutler earlier this season and showed that, when he started and played a full game, he's actually done really well. But, what do you expect for him in his first game back here?
I got to believe he's 100% healthy. I really do. They wouldn't be bringing him back at 90%. At least when he was a little banged up, maybe it was easy for Trestman to say, Cutler, you're not quite ready yet, Jay. Let's sit you. The other guy's been playing great anyways, blah, blah, blah. So I think he's healthy, and with the weapons he has, there's no downgrade for me with either Alshon or Marshall. Like you mentioned, I know people think that they weren't going to Alshon as much in the beginning, but either guy, love them both. No change for me. I know what you're saying about flare-up injury, risk, but I think you got to go with him at being 100%. Now, could he be rusty? Yes. I hope I have another option for this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a decent matchup, but you just don't feel comfortable throwing him in there right off the bat, as a starter in your playoffs. Brandon Weeden sounds like he's passed all of his issues with his concussions. Looks to be healthy enough to play in this game, but Jason Campbell still remain the starter. Just want to throw out some stats here real quick. Josh Gordon in games with Jason Campbell this year, as with Campbell being the starter, Week 8, 5 for 132 and a touch. Week 11, 5 for 125 and a touch. And Week 14, 7 for 151 and a touch. You don't need me giving you reasons to start Flash Gordon, but you can see in games that Campbell started, at least 125 yards and a touchdown in all three of them. Gordon's a stud. You don't need me to give you reasons to start him. Matt, I do expect in this game, though, I expect a heckling from you probably on this one a little bit. I have Chris Ogbonnaya 18th this week. The next closest ranker had him at 44. Obviously I'm doing this ranking considering that McGahee is out, but this is a terrible Bears run defense. I just think it's going to be more Ogbonnaya, a little bit less Fozzie Whitaker, but 18, am I crazy? Do you think it's going to happen? Is he really going to finish as a top 20 running back this week?
Well, I've said it how many times this year, top 20 is nothing to be too impressed with in this NFL today, but I don't think you're absolutely nuts. It is a cakewalk matchup. McGahee, concussion. So Ogbonnaya is going to get a shot at it here. I just don't know how good of a player he is. And really, I think Fozzie Whitaker is still going to be involved. So I guess you could kind of call this your bold call of the week, but not a crazy one. With this matchup, it's certainly a chance that it could happen.
Yeah, I'm taking a leap of faith here. More against the Bears defense and less for Chris Ogbonnaya. But DeMarco Murray we saw last week just breaking off 9-yard runs like it was nothing every play. That Bears run defense is horrendous. Texans and Colts, aside from Andre Johnson, I have a tough time getting behind anybody in this game. Colts have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Johnson has had 100 yards or 2 or more touchdowns in 5 of his last 6 games. I have him as my number 3 wide receiver this week after Megatron and Flash Gordon. And then also for the Texans, Ben Tate, he's up, he's down. What are you expecting from Ben Tate a little bit in this game?
It's just unfortunate he's been banged up. I really like him as a player as well, and I just don't know, how healthy he really is. Obviously, I think those broken ribs are still a concern. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing, the up and the down. He's probably feeling better some days than and other times he's kind of feeling pretty sore, with an injury like that. So Colts defense certainly has struggled, and I'm going to go with a good game from him. I've been ranking him higher, and obviously since he's taken over more of the role, pretty easy to do. Like I said, top 20, yeah, easy, I think, and probably more like top 15. I like Ben Tate.
Well, the thing with Ben Tate is the workload, and that's the only reason why I think you can get behind him as a running back too.
Yep.
it just he doesn't. I mean, aside from that game against New England, he really doesn't have a whole lot of upside to him. But he's just that consistent guy that'll get you those 8 to 12 points or so. Nothing to get too excited about, but a consistent RB2. Colts side, just as big of a mess as the Titans. I mean, I really don't feel comfortable with any Colts player in this game. Matt, let's just for a second, I'm going to assume that out of all the positional players, T.Y. Hilton you'd probably have ranked the highest, correct? Out of all the running backs and wide receivers for the Colts?
Yeah.
All right, so I want to throw a couple of names at you here real quick. Would you start T.Y. Hilton or Lamar Miller against a terrible New England run defense?
Well, Lamar Miller is questionable to be playing this week, right? I mean, he's been back at practice, but it's looking like he's going to play.
Yeah, it's looking like he's going to play. Assume he plays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to go Hilton because Thomas is there, and he's certainly part of the workload.
Wow, I was going to think it was going to be Miller hands down. I was going to throw a couple more at you, but or another one at you, but
what makes you like Miller after Thomas had over 100 yards rushing last week?
I just like the matchup. The Patriots are so bad against the run. It's almost as bad.
Yeah,
as the
no, I hear you.
And Miller has had games where he's produced very, very well. I mean, my other one I was going to throw at you was the guy we just talked about, Chris Obanaya or Hilton, but you're obviously going Hilton, it sounds like.
Yeah, yep.
I'm just really down on T.Y. Hilton lately, I guess, then. Just the inconsistencies, as bad as Luck has been playing, too.
Yeah, it's almost been more consistently not good than inconsistent, There was a nice little start there when Reggie Wayne was out, but it seems now that teams are keying on him, he's having trouble being that, number one.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. He's having a hard time transitioning to that number one. And then real quick, for what it's worth, Le'Veon Brazil spotted in a walking boot after their game last week and is questionable for this game. Obviously you're not starting him, but if he's out, maybe that bumps up guys like T.Y. Hilton and Coby Fleener just a little bit more.
I did a little looking into the Rodgers kid, too, and character issues were a big problem with him, I guess. He was a one-time 1,000-yard receiver in college, played with some other very good wide receivers, and could be a guy to keep an eye on. Maybe not like we talked about the other day, but I kind of like him in the dynasty format. He was a 6'2" guy who ran a 4.4 5.40, so some good speed. Dynasty guy. That's why I'm bringing him up.
I was gonna say you love your big wide receivers that run
fast. Love them. Yeah. Oh, I mean, just a big weapon. You can utilize them so many positions on the field.
Yeah. Patriots and Dolphins. We just mentioned it. Lamar Miller officially listed as probable for this game and has been practicing. We could see him suffer a setback leading up to the game, so you definitely want to watch those the inactive reports before the game. We just talked about it. It's a great matchup. Take the Browns out for a second because we know how bad people like, Willis McGahee are. But in the 2 games prior to the Browns, the Patriots allowed 395 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns to running backs in those 2 games. So definitely giving up a lot of yardage and a lot of touchdowns. Again, just kind of reemphasizes my point about Lamar Miller. I currently have Daniel Thomas ranked 25, but that's because I was assuming Miller would be out in this game. If Miller's in, I'm putting Miller in at 25 and would probably move Daniel Thomas to around the 35 area or so. But, it's sounding like both of them are going to play in this game. Matt, can you see a scenario where you would move either of these guys ahead of guys like C.J. Spiller, Bobby Rainey, or Le'Veon Bell?
No, I mean, even with the matchup Rainey has this week, who's a guy I like quite a bit, that matchup, even playing against San Francisco, I'd much rather play him than Miller or Thomas. Even though they're playing New England, they're guys that just kind of eat into each other sometimes, and it's good luck guessing. Although last time they played New England, if I remember correctly, they both produced a pretty solid day.
Yeah, they did. They both ran all over New England.
Yeah.
You talk about the 2 Dolphins running backs.
Yes.
Yeah. So it should be interesting here. I would have both very high, obviously, or higher than normal because of the matchup. And then Matt, real quick on the Patriots side, I just wanted to point this out. Really great stat that I actually found. I tweeted it out earlier this day, but there's been 4 games this season where Aaron Dobson has missed. In those 4 games, Julian Edelman, 31 receptions, 354 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Aaron Dobson is questionable this week. I was the only ranker to put Edelman ahead of Amendola. Miami does have a very stout pass defense, but I think Edelman could have another nice day here with Gronk out and Dobson banged up. What do you think of those numbers? I found that really surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more coincidence than anything. They're just such different types.
Four coincidental games?
I think they're just such different type players. It's not like Edelman. Maybe he is a versatile guy. He can kind of do all positions on the field for a wide receiver, Edelman. But I don't know. I think Edelman and Dobson are so much different. I can't see a direct correlation, but obviously the numbers are showing that. You mentioned that you were the only one to put Edelman ahead of him. If I had ranked, that certainly would have been the case for me. I don't see why you put Edelman behind Amendola. The way things have been going recently, I can't understand that. And I'm thinking Amendola. I mean, Edelman is certainly your number one pass catcher in New England now with Gronk out. Obviously, I'm not including Green in that statement, but wide receivers, gotta love Edelman the way he's been going.
I mean, I agree with you. I don't see a direct correlation, between Dobson and Edelman. It does seem weird because they are totally different players. The only thing I can think of is maybe when they're both in the game, Edelman's getting 4 targets and Dobson's getting 4 targets, and with Dobson out, all of a sudden Edelman's getting all of those targets. He's getting 8 targets now and producing just a little bit more. It's the only thing I can really think of as to why that would correlate like that. But if you look it up, Edelman's 4 biggest games of the season were when Dobson was out. So
yeah, just a good nugget.
Just really interesting. Maybe a guy to pick up and maybe throw in your starting lineup this week in a PPR format.
Stats like that are great when you're down to 2 guys in your bench. You're not sure. Hey, there's one that really can kind of break the tie for you. Good nugget, good piece. I like that.
Yeah. Eagles and Vikings. Both Gerhardt and Peterson sat out practice yesterday, Matt. It's sounding like Gerhardt will play, but Peterson is currently listed as questionable. You know the Vikings better than anybody else on this podcast, obviously. What do you think? Is Peterson going to play?
He said he wanted to practice today, and I hadn't seen the reports. Do you know if he did?
I didn't see. I tried looking that up.
I know today was the day that both of them were supposed to return to practice, or at least earlier in the week. Earlier in the week, that was the plan from the organization. Both guys would return today, and I think Toby was more likely to actually return today than Peterson had. So it's hard to say without knowing that. I really think Peterson is going to sit out. I really do. What is there to win in this organization? What is there to gain right now from him playing other than getting closer to Emmitt Smith's all-time record? You know what I mean? Honestly, there's no reason. I think the gain would be he doesn't play, you have a better chance to lose. And they don't think like that. Not many organizations will, but I wish they would. I think it's going to be Gerhardt, and I'm worried about him because it's a hammy type thing where those can spring back at any moment. Tough to really recommend him too.
If both of them don't go, who's the third guy in line?
Asiata, Matt Asiata. He's actually a guy who is a fullback. He's really more of a fullback, bigger guy, not much of a talent. Certainly nobody I'd recommend. I'd look other ways.
Now let me ask you this, because we just mentioned about how you wouldn't really recommend Gerhardt here. I have him 17th. Where would you rank Gerhardt, assuming Peterson's out?
Well, if Gerhardt's going to play, and Peterson is out, I like the matchup. I would have him as a top 15 play. The Vikings run the football. That's a big part of their offense. Gerhardt has proved to be very capable. I think in every game he started in his career, over the last 2 years, he's had at least 90 yards rushing. And you watch him last week, he came in. Obviously, that run, that was a gaping hole, more of a good call. But the guy runs hard. And like I said, big part of their game plan is run the football. He's going to get work. So top 15, I think, for sure. You just got to hope that hammy stays fresh throughout the game and that you don't lose him come second quarter. But if you've lost Peterson, he's probably your option. What else do you have?
Wow, top 15. I was gonna ask you if you thought Rob was crazy having him all the way at 11 as a running back 1, but it sounds like you're pretty close to that.
Yeah.
Eagles side of the ball. I mean, again, it's the Vikings defense, so I'm all in on the Eagles here. I mean, I got Nick Foles at 3 this week, McCoy at 1. I even have Deshaun Jackson and Riley Cooper both in my top 11. I mean, I just absolutely love the Eagles this week. And Riley Cooper, I love him in all those daily fantasy sports leagues, your draft streets, your FanDuels. He's been getting the most targets from Foles, and we saw the numbers they put up, in the first few games together this season. That Vikings secondary is really, really bad and lets up plenty of big plays, and I think we see a couple big ones here.
Yeah, Marcus, I have Stafford. He's been my quarterback all season in our home league. I'm starting Nick Foles over Stafford this week. They're in Minnesota. Don't worry about that terrible weather that you had to see last week, and I think you're going to love what Foles, like you said, every Eagle guy is going to do for you this week.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know I gave you a lot of crap for that earlier this week, but I ended up actually go ahead and ranking them that way as well. I ranked Foles higher than Stafford, so definitely don't give you I take back the crap I gave you for that earlier in the week. Seahawks and Giants. Matt, the Seattle defense, I mean, it is an elite defense, right? I mean,
hey, Marcus, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention Xavier Rhodes is expected to be out. So yeah. Another one that you're going to love. He's their best defensive back, no question. So, yeah, Cooper, Deshaun, love him. Foles, sorry. I meant to mention that, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just a huge game for those two. But, Matt, going back to Seattle here, elite defense, right? I mean, obviously one of the best defenses in the league, correct?
Yeah, I love it. Love how they plug people in. Browner's out, and they don't miss a beat.
Yeah, but here's my thing. I mean, earlier in the season, I talked about start your defense against the Giants, and I think that still pretty much holds true, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's where Rob loses me a little bit. I have the Seattle defense as my number 2 defense this week.
Rob, yeah, certainly.
Rob has them 19th.
Yeah, I think. Maybe he thought he was Seattle Supersonics.
I have no idea what's going on there. I mean, Seahawks defense is amazing. Great matchup, too. I mean, basically Rob has them unstartable even in 16-team formats.
Yeah, I think it's probably the case of him hoping and wishing too much that he's going to win his own fantasy matchup and expecting Andre Brown to have 300 yards rushing or something. I can't imagine that.
I think he's regretting that, trading away the Seattle defense earlier this year, and now it's coming back to his little bias is coming back in or something.
Weird.
Or he's just expecting somehow a crazy great game out of Eli Manning, which...
Hey, there's always the fact, too, that maybe he's just an idiot.
That could be true.
That is probably the most likely scenario.
We should get Rob back on the podcast someday, and we should just have a whole segment called "Is Rob an Idiot?" and just ask him weird questions, and we'll find out. But listen, as good as we know the Seahawks D is, what are you expecting from this offense? I mean, like I said, Eli Manning, I'm down on him. I didn't even rank Eli in my top 25. Cruz, I have at 19. Ruben Randall, 27. Hakeem Nicks, way down at 51. Even Andre Brown, as much as I like Andre Brown, I barely had him in my top 20 at number 19. What are your thoughts on the Giants' offense here?
The only guy that I'm not worried about is Andre Brown. You marked him. I mean, you lowered his rankings this week, obviously due to matchup, but he's still a guy that if you've got him, you're playing him. You're rolling with him. And Seattle, if there's one thing that they're not the best at, it's what I mean. It's the run. So he could have a solid game. Beyond that, though, I don't want to play anybody. Richard Sherman, I think, is the best cornerback in football. I don't know who he's going to line up across, and I don't think he has to, but they just haven't been producing there in New York. Unless you're an Andre Brown owner, you probably want to stay away from most of them. Now, if you have Victor Cruz, that's hard to do, but it should have been getting a lot easier over the last 8 weeks or so. He has been decent lately, but certainly hard to play against this defense. They just shut people down.
Those last couple of weeks, I think, makes it kind of muddies up the water a little bit, I think, for fantasy owners, because they see those last couple of weeks and think, okay, maybe he's coming back, maybe he'll be good again. But for me, I'm still kind of staying away if I can. Yeah,
and let's face it, the targets have always been there for him, so that's one thing that kept me hanging on,
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Giants D has been playing a little bit better here, but you're still not worried about Russell Wilson or Lynch. And obviously, I don't think any of the Seattle receivers are startable. But Matt, by the way here, just Percy Harvin hasn't practiced all week, currently listed as questionable, but obviously he's not playing. there's really a good chance that bet just never plays through because Hartman never plays again this year. It just amazes me.
Yeah, actually, Percy has been ruled out as of this later on today, Friday. So he's out. Keep on calling him out, and I'll never lose this bet. At this point,
yeah, just keep him out.
Keep him out. Let him come back for the playoffs. Make sure he's 110%.
Yeah.
49ers. If you're Seattle, I'm saying obviously fantasy, drop him.
Yeah, he's definitely droppable. 49ers and Bucks. I know it's hard to endorse Colin Kaepernick, but that's exactly what I'm doing this game. I have him 9th this week ahead of guys like Brady, Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck. The Bucks defense, aside from that game last week, against the Bills and E.J. Manuel, who obviously can't throw on anybody, besides that game, the Bucks have allowed 2 or more passing touchdowns in every week since their bye week. That's 8 straight weeks of 2 or more touchdowns passing. Crabtree's kind of fallen back into form. Vernon Davis has been a stud lately. Anquan Bolden still looks good. I really like Colin Kaepernick this week. And then, meanwhile, for the Bucks, it's a tough D for them to face. The 49ers defense, 3rd best against quarterbacks, 7th best against opposing wide receivers. I want to like Bobby Rainey more in this game, but the 49ers have only allowed 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 10 games. What are your thoughts on this game, Matt? Is there anybody you really want to endorse in this game?
No, I mean, going through it, it's all your normal 49er, I want to play Vernon Davis. I want to play Vernon.
Frank Gore.
Colin, I've been off of Colin for quite a while. I hope I have another option. Frank Gore, I want to play him, although the Bucks do have a pretty decent run defense, and he has been pretty bad lately. Look at Frank Gore's numbers; it's been concerning. So I don't know how much I like Frank Gore. Now on the Bucks side, I'm playing Jackson, of course. I agree with you, Marcus. Rainey. At the beginning of the year, the San Francisco defense wasn't the San Francisco defense. They've been rounding into form certainly in the last half of the year, second half of the year here. He had a good game last week, but not a game I'm looking forward to this week. He was a guy that we knew coming in the playoffs. The matchups weren't ideal, so this is one of those. Don't want to play him unless I have to. And you probably have another option considering he's a guy you found late in the season. Beyond that, though, nothing else that I want to talk about with them.
Yeah, like I said, for some reason,
I love the 49ers defense if you've got them.
Yeah, definitely. For some reason, I just really want to endorse Colin Kaepernick. Him and Chris Obenai are pretty much my plant a flag in them type players this week, where I just really, really want to endorse those guys. For some reason, I just feel both those guys have big weeks this week. Bills and Jaguars, not a lot of fantasy relevancy, I feel, in this game. MJD sounds like he's going to be a game-time decision. Didn't practice today. Has now been ruled doubtful, so it really sounds like he's not playing. Jordan Todman obviously is the guy if MJD can't go. Matt, I got to ask you this question. I have this decision to make in one of my leagues, and I'll tell you which way I went afterwards, but would you rather have Jordan Todman against a bad Bills run defense or start another guy in this game like CJ Spiller?
So start the crap that we know about or the crap we don't know about. I guess I'll start the crap we know about just because I've seen that crap, have a couple good craps. So what I mean by that is I guess CJ Spiller.
That almost reminded me of the South Park episode with when they measured all their craps and Keurigs. Hey, look, this is 3 Katie Keurigs. That was a great episode. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. But yeah, I'm with you too. Start the crap, CJ Spiller. That's who I'm going with here. I did pick Todman up just because I am in my fantasy playoffs. Obviously, I had a first round bye, and I got to kind of handcuff MJD now that he's going through things like this. But for this week, especially given the matchup, I'm going CJ Spiller. But Matt, the other running back for the Bills here, Fred Jackson. I know it's a great matchup. I got Fred Jackson at 15. I still have him ahead of CJ Spiller. But again, Rob has him at 8. Do you endorse Fred Jackson all the way in the top 10?
Absolutely not.
Just chalk this one up to another one as Rob is.
No, you can't. The way he's been going lately, I guess if this was week 4, yes, but no, certainly not the way it's been for Fred Jackson. You like the matchup, but I can't really endorse either CJ or Fred the way things have been.
Yeah.
unless you're asking me. Yeah, I'd start Fred over Todman.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely start Fred over Todman too. Chiefs and Raiders. Matt, who's your top Raiders running back in this game? McFadden is doubtful. Seems to be a shoo-in not to play. Jennings sounds like he's going to be back. You got to rank Jennings ahead of Marcel Reese here, right?
Yeah, I do. Even though I wish, trust me, everyone out there, if I was the coach of Oakland, you'd be happy you'd have Marcel Reese on your fantasy football team, but I'm not. So, yeah, it's going to be Jennings for me, and then Reese second. McFadden
is going to be out.
Yeah, McFadden is. I mean, he's out of this. He's gone. There's no plans in the future for this team to have him and retain his services. So he's gone. Why bring him back? Let's let Jennings play. Figure out what you got there. And yeah, that's unfortunate. I can't say Reese, but it's Jennings, no question. I think.
You know, it would be funny now that obviously it seems like the writing's on the wall for McFadden. We already know Chris Johnson is out of Tennessee. It sounds like at the end of the year. Wouldn't that be funny if these two teams just basically swap running backs and we see Chris Johnson sign with Oakland and Darren McFadden sign with Tennessee?
No, I think they're both moving on from the old washed-up guys.
Yeah. The Tennessee thing with Chris Johnson actually makes it a little bit more interesting. If that was maybe part of the reason why they paid Sean Green as much money as they did. I know we're getting a little off topic here, but Sean Green might be a good buy low guy now for dynasty leagues in that rare chance that he becomes a starting running back next year for the Titans.
More of that crap that you know.
More the crap you know, yeah. Jets and Panthers, Jonathan Stewart ruled out in this game. D'Angelo Williams, still a tough matchup against a Jets run defense that hasn't, has a lot of 200-yard backs in back-to-back weeks with the Lamar Miller, Mike Gillislee, and then Marcel Reese. You're still not thinking about starting Williams this week, are you?
I'd have him right around 20. I think if I had got the rankings this week, I think he would have been right around 20 for me. I don't hate Williams. I haven't all year, and now he's right back into the role that he did really well for a lot of fantasy owners to start out the season. Like you said, Jets haven't been as good as they were the last 2 weeks. Last week had a lot to do. I think the weather was rough there, right? Yeah. So I mean, tough to chalk up those games as what's really going to happen. We'll go with the history of what they've been doing throughout the season. They have a good run D. So I'm going to say it's a tough matchup, but I like D'Angelo. Like I said, right around 20, I think it would have been for me.
Cam Newton this week. Just real quick, I just love him this week. I have him as my number 4 quarterback. Jets 24th worst against opposing quarterbacks. Cam Newton's bad game last week, he still scored 15 points. And before that, he had 3 straight games of over 20 fantasy points. I love me some Cam Newton this week. And then Jets side of the ball, I feel like it's the same analysis we have week to week to week. You're not touching any of the Jets players. You're in the playoffs now. You're not even thinking about any of them. On a side note, Dynasty and Keeper Leagues, Stephen Hill placed on the IR again for the swelling in his knee. Matt, you got nothing you want to talk about the Jets side, do you?
No.
Yeah. Packers and Cowboys. We thought we might see our first game with Aaron Rodgers back, but no, we won't. No, Aaron Rodgers still back to Matt Flynn and company. And Eddie Lacy, though, Matt, still dealing with his ankle injury, still banged up. But the word is that they're not going to limit his workload, that they're going to give him a full workload despite that ankle. Dallas is allowing the most fantasy points to opposing running backs this season. Are you worried about Eddie Lacy maybe that injury flaring up on him in this game?
Absolutely. It's something you could always see, and I think the way the game goes might dictate how long they keep him in there. He's another one of those future valuable commodities to this organization. With Aaron Rodgers not being able to play, say this game doesn't go as planned, if Lacy's feeling a little banged up, they could be more inclined to get Starks some more as the season begins to kind of go by the wayside, So it's too bad because the matchup as a Lacy owner going into the playoffs, you're pumped. You get this defense in the playoffs with Eddie Lacy. You couldn't have been more excited. It's a little more scary now, but it's tough to not get excited about it. He's a stud, and this defense is as easy as it gets. So you got to play him with confidence. Just hope that he can kind of bang through it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I still ranked him 7th this week. I'm worried about the flare-up of the injury a little bit. Just enough to move him below guys like Steven Jackson and Alfred Morris for me, but still running back 1 territory. Dallas almost equally as bad in the passing game. I moved Jordy Nelson back ahead of Boykin this week, but just a couple of quick stats about Jordy and Boykin here with Matt Flynn as their quarterback these last 3 games. Each of them only 14 fantasy points total over the last 3 games with Matt Flynn. Boykin obviously kind of killing you with that 0 game kind of thrown in the middle, but tough to love anybody in the passing game when Matt Flynn is throwing you the ball. And then Dallas side here, Des Bryant has only one out of his last 6 games. He's had at least 80 yards receiving. You really haven't minded because he's scored 4 touchdowns in those 6 games. But Green Bay is allowing the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Do you think he finally cracks 100 yards in this game, Matt?
I do. I think it's a great matchup, and Tony really needs to come through for this Dallas team. This is a big game for them. The Packers are certainly playing for quite a bit as well, but it seems things aren't going well in that organization. With all the concerns over Aaron Rodgers, he's still saying that he has pain, and I think, like I said, I think Romo has to have a big game, and for him to have a big game, Dez is going to be a big part of that. It's a great matchup. Certainly an easy defense to do it against. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a bounce back for Dez, and he's got to be, right? He's got to be due.
Yeah, I mean, I think
he's better than this.
If there's going to be a game he cracks 100 yards, I think this is it for him. Cardinals and Titans, Matt, I am saying no way to CJ2K here. Has only broke 80 yards rushing once in the last 5 weeks, just one 100-yard game all year. Faces the number 1 run defense that just shut down Zach Stacy. I dropped him all the way down to 27th this week, so way down in my rankings. I'm going to throw out some guys at you real quick. You tell me if you would start Chris Johnson over any of these guys. These are all guys I have over him in the rankings. Bobby Rainey.
No way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But you take Bobby Rainey over Chris Johnson.
Yeah, you said yeah. I'm not taking Bobby Rainey. I'm taking Bobby Rainey. Yes.
DeMarco Murray.
Murray.
Spiller.
Spiller.
Lamar Miller.
Lamar Miller.
Yep. Ben Jarvis Green Ellis.
BJGE.
And Chris Obanaya.
Yeah, with
against
Leahy out, I'll go Obanaya.
Isn't that scary? I mean, think about all those.
I mean, it's been how much Green has been getting a lot of work.
Yeah, he has.
And he's definitely the touchdown guy.
But just scary. I mean, think about that. We just named off 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 names right there, and not 6 of the high up names that you would expect to be putting ahead of Chris Johnson this week. That's how far. I mean, the matchup hurts, and really his production lately. Matt, on Tuesday, you kind of opened my eyes to Larry Fitzgerald here a little bit. 6 touchdowns in his last 6 games, but has only broke 80 receiving yards once over that span. Kind of like Dez. The touchdowns have been coming, so it hasn't really mattered. You think it's going to be more of this for Larry Fitzgerald in this game?
Yeah, I mean, he's just been so consistent, like I mentioned to you Tuesday, and I hope. I haven't got a chance to see any recent reports on Floyd. I know he's been banged up, not participating. So I think he really helps Larry. Take some pressure off of him. He's starting to be a guy you need to seriously consider out there rolling some coverage towards, because he is every bit the player recently that Larry's been. So I hope he's healthy and ready to go. That's going to help Larry, as you've seen lately. Still got to love Larry, though, and he's been very consistent. So it's been a good year for him with Carson, a quarterback that can competently throw the football down the field. He hasn't had that for a couple of years down there now.
Yeah, and Titans, real quick, just top 3 in pass defense, so it is kind of a tough
how'd that go last week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think, to be honest with you, after looking back at the numbers, I think Fitzgerald has an okay game here.
Yeah.
Saints and Rams. Rams 5th best against the tight end, but it really doesn't matter when you're talking Jimmy Graham. He's still my number 1 tight end. He's probably everybody's number 1 tight end now. With Gronk out, you're still starting Graham, and basically you're starting all the Saints players, except for maybe at the running back situation where I think it gets a little muddy, Matt. Pierre Thomas, 49 total yards in the last 2 games combined, no touchdowns in the last 4. Rams are 28th worst against the run. What do you think about Pierre Thomas? Do you think he finally gets it going again here, or do you think it's more of what we've seen the last few weeks?
Well, with Ingram getting healthier, there's been kind of a correlation there. He's been on the field more. Pierre Thomas has been on the field less. And I just think it's more a case of everybody gets a little piece of the pie out there. It's hard to trust anybody week to week when you're talking the running back situation in New Orleans. There was a little stretch there where Pierre started to kind of get us a little bit excited, but it's kind of back to normal, I guess is what you'd say with New Orleans. You haven't been able to trust the back from there for years now, unless you're talking Sproles. So I don't think so. I don't want to trust him at all. A lot of guys I'd rather play, including Lamar Miller and Daniel Thomas, both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I ranked him all the way down at 32 this week. I really wanted to put him higher, but just I couldn't see doing it. Matt, I think it was last podcast we did a lot of start your studs, and Zach Stacy was one of the guys we talked about, but he's the only guy you're obviously considering starting for the Rams. But the Saints haven't allowed a 100-yard running back since week 9. And listen to this. In the last 5 weeks, listen to the running backs they've shut down. DeMarco Murray, Frank Gore, Steven Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, and your boy D'Angelo Williams. Those 5 guys combined over the last 5 weeks for just 297 rushing yards. So those are no slouches at running back by any means. And they combined for less than 60 rushing yards a game. The Saints defense has been really good against the run these last couple games. I mean, we stress start your studs, but could this be another bad game for Zach Stacy?
Yeah, that's a great stat you had because, for a better part of the season, a lot of the analysis when you're playing the Saints was, hey, run the football on them, averaging over 5 yards a carry against the Saints, blah, blah, blah. That was a line that I used a lot because it was true and it was what was happening. And like you said, that's changed recently. So Stacy's been a guy who has been a little bit coming back down to earth as well. Didn't get a ton of work last week. I mean, he still got pretty much all of it, but didn't get a ton of work last week and definitely didn't produce. Hasn't been recently. So, not your favorite matchup if you're a Stacy owner. Probably have to play him, but keep your expectations down. Now, last time I think I said that was LaShawn McCoy last week, so who knows?
Yeah. We'll see how it turns out, but I'm with you, Matt. Kind of tame those expectations a little bit.
Yeah, you know what, Marcus? Bringing Matt McCoy joke up there actually just made me think, as we're getting into the end of the season here, it's big on Sundays. We do what we can throughout the week to analyze what we think, but sometimes weather, like we saw last week, that comes rolling through is something that happens, that you don't know till Sunday morning. It's something you need to make sure you're looking at when you're looking at your rosters, your lineups, especially here late in the season, in the playoffs. You get some conditions where 6-7 inches on the ground, it changes the game completely. Throw everything out, and then just almost go by gut. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, to your point, I mean, even us up here in New England, you've probably seen it. You got some stations reporting, less than a couple inches this weekend, Saturday night coming into Sunday, and some stations reporting up to a foot. So it's really hard for us on a Friday night to kind of predict the weather and how it might outcome this game. And to Matt's point, even more reason for you guys to hit us up on Sundays before kickoff using hashtag #AskBlindside and asking us your start-sit questions, because that's really the best opportunity you'll have to get the most up-to-date information from Matt and I, and Rob, if you choose to listen to his crazy rankings.
Yeah, what do you think about things, too, like, hey, when it's snowing like that, I'd love to look up some numbers here because I think I've got a great idea, but what about playing defenses in the snow? Like, geez, we heard about 11 fumbles, you know what I mean? It's would be kind of nice to see. So, yeah, huge. Hit us up from 12 to 1 every Sunday.
Snow games are always hard, though, for defense because it's real hit or miss. Either it's going to be a shutdown game or sometimes a crazy play happens where somebody breaks one because everybody falls down. So it's really bad. But, yeah, make sure to hit us up on Sundays on Twitter. Bengals and Steelers. Matt, you'll be happy to know that I finally moved Antonio Brown into my top 10 this week. I finally am getting on board with Antonio Brown. The hate's starting to go away. I don't think it'll ever fully be away, but it's getting a little bit lower. But Matt, not really a whole lot to talk about in this game. You're starting Antonio Brown, you're starting Le'Veon Bell, you're starting A.J. Green, Giovanni Bernard and Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. It's maybe flex plays depending on how your team is set up or how, if it's a PPR league or not. Anything you wanted to add on Bengals and Steelers?
I'd say those guys are definitely flex plays, but no, I mean, it's start your regular guys. Andy Dalton, interesting. Really took off last week. Could he be starting one of his stretches again? And guess what? He's got a great matchup next week. Minnesota next week. So not going to start him. Just hey, if he plays another one, get excited about his Week 16 matchup.
I still can't get excited about that Week 16 matchup because that is your fantasy football championship. If I go into that championship game and I end up losing, I am always going to look back on it as I started Andy Dalton in my championship.
Yeah. You think that's what the whole Bengals organization thinks every Sunday when they lose?
Probably.
I can't believe we started Andy Dalton.
I can't get behind Andy Dalton at all. Ravens and Lions. Matt, there's really, it seems like two types of questionable in the NFL. The Calvin Johnson questionable, where he's questionable, but he's playing. There's no way Calvin's not playing.
Yeah.
And then the Reggie Bush questionable, where you're worried that he may be a game-time decision. Reggie Bush, limited in practice again today. It's a Monday night game. I mean, it's not like you're going to have his backup, Joique Bell, because Joique Bell is already rostered in somebody's team, so it's not like you can pick him up off the waiver wire. Are you taking a chance on Reggie Bush on Monday night?
Yeah, I think he's good to go. He said he's going to play. I'm going to believe him. He also said he's never going to fumble again a couple weeks ago, and he hasn't yet. I know he didn't play last week, but still counts in my book. So he's a really trustworthy guy, I think.
Oh God,
I have no idea. I don't even know how trustworthy he is. Never met him before in my life. So it's scary to trust him. But if you've got him, my God, if you can't play him, what are you going to fill him in with?
Yeah, but see, the thing I'm worried about is not only you worried about whether or not he'll play, but if he plays, is that injury going to flare up on him again? I mean, last week we saw it flare up on him in warm-ups. What's going to happen in a real game? I
continue to believe last week was just he went to USC. He was like, bullshit, this is bullshit. Too much snow out here. I'm hurting.
He's probably
I'm just kidding. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. I'm joking. I'm joking.
He's just like, what is this stuff? We play in a dome now. What is going on? Ray Rice, Matt, for the Ravens, dead to me. Not even considering him. I don't know about you.
I know. I tried to love him last week playing against my pathetic Vikings, and he wasn't pathetic, but he was pretty pathetic.
Yeah, he was pretty pathetic. The only guys in the Ravens I can really get behind in this game, Torrey Smith and Dennis Pitta. I think those are two guys that you're potentially playing. Torrey Smith, I can really get behind. Dennis Pitta, kind of hard because it's only been one game, but again, if you're one of those teams that lost Gronkowski and you picked him up, I think he's a great fill-in guy for you this week.
Yeah, Marcus, I finally saw, and I didn't write it down exactly, but it was about 40% of snaps is what he played in last week's game. By he, I mean Dennis Pitta, and you have to assume that snap count's going to increase this week. There were 11 targets last week, 11 targets in those 40% of plays. So give me 70% of plays, and wow, it's going to be 15 targets, right? If the math works. So maybe not, but yeah, hey, if you lost Gronk, I don't think there's a better tight end to fill in with.
No, definitely not. So make sure you follow us on Twitter, me at Marcus Katkin, Matt at Matt Dugal. If you don't have Twitter, you're really missing out on a lot of stuff, a lot of great fantasy advice from a lot of guys out there, a lot of breaking news. So you really need to get on there and hit us up at hashtag BlindsidePod or blindside@blindsidefootball.com to send us your questions for the podcast. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, Matt, Rob, and I live tweeting every Sunday from noon until kickoff. Send your start-sit questions to hashtag AskBlindside.
Flex. Running backs. Wide receivers. Flex. Flex. Flex.
That music means, it's time to talk about flex. So let's talk about flex. We got Ryan at WCU Catamount 10 asks, do you flex Cordero Patterson, Toby Gerhart, or Charles Clay in a non-PPR league?
I don't like you asking me if the way the song goes. Let's talk about flex, and then you ask me, do I flex any of these guys? No, I'm not. I don't think so. Now, if I'm actually going to play him on my fantasy roster in the flex position, I think go over the names for me one more time, and I'll.
Cordero Patterson,
Tough.
Toby Gerhart, and Charles Clay.
It's so hard right now because it's Friday. If things are looking good for Toby, it's clearly Toby for me. And he did. I looked while we've been talking here. Both participated slightly in practice today, and by both I mean Peterson and Gerhart. Like I said, I just have a feeling it's going to be Gerhart that plays, and if he's getting a full workload, it's Gerhart for me, no question, not close.
Yeah, this isn't close for me. It's Gerhart.
Now, what if he doesn't go, Marcus? Let's say he's out, then the other two.
No, I'm actually going Cordero Patterson.
Yeah, I think I agree with you.
Got a couple new names to the questions here. Kyle Orvis at Kyle Orvo 85 asks, Zach Stacy or Giovanni Bernard? Seems like he must be really worried about the Zach Stacy matchup.
Yeah, and obviously coming off last week, as much as I've loved Zach Stacy, I'm actually going to say Gio.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Was it those stats earlier that made you change your mind?
Yeah. I mean, the way he's been lately, it's been tough. Gio has been good. Gio's been good this year. I know it's tough to pinpoint the games, but overall he's a top 20 guy, top 20 running back, easy. So it's Gio.
Kyle, I don't think we're going to help you out on this one because I would have said I'm staying Stacy.
Great.
I like Gio too, but Gio is he's big play dependent. I feel he's not going to score unless it's from 15 or 20 yards out.
No, that's not true. Terrible.
I like Zach Stacy more.
Yeah, and that's the last question we ever get from him.
Yeah. Mo Jassa at Mo Jassa asks, would you swap out would you put Cooper, Floyd, or Amendola, swap any of those guys out for Gerhart?
I'm saying Cooper. Floyd being banged up. Cooper against Minnesota. Are you kidding me? Xavier Rhodes out. Yeah, I love Cooper this week. In Minnesota on that fast track. Love that matchup. There's not a better matchup if you're a wide receiver than Minnesota.
Yeah, Riley Cooper, like I said, I have him as my 11th ranked wide receiver this week. So his next question here is, what if Chris Johnson's thrown in that mix? Is it still Cooper?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have Gerhart ahead of Chris Johnson.
I was going to say, I'd rather Gerhart than Cooper. I'm sorry, I'd rather Gerhart than Chris Johnson.
Yeah.
And so I'm Cooper over Gerhart.
I'm Cooper over all those guys, and
yeah.
Like you just said, Gerhart over Chris Johnson if we were talking that in. Josh Cahan at Josh Cahan asks, Gronkless Brady against a good Miami pass defense or Russell Wilson in possible snow? I know it's not really a flex question, but let's help him out.
I'm going to say Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson's been playing out of his mind. I understand the snow concern and how much more running they may do, but I'm probably even more concerned about Brady and not having Gronk and just the whole mess that is the Patriots wide receivers.
And the solid defense he's facing this week.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, that does it for this week's podcast. You got anything else you wanted to add before we go?
That'll be it.
All right, guys. We'll catch you on Sunday. Like we said, make sure to hit us up at #AskBlindside.
Peace out.
Yo, check it. It's my time. I'm rapping about Blindside, fantasy football podcast in this rhyme because they got me the inside scoop on Adrian Peterson. Yeah, he's that dude on Cam Newton. Yeah, they give me the news more on Megatron, Calvin Johnson if I stay tuned. On all quarterbacks, RG3 happens to be the fastest QB in the league. In fact, Colin Kaepernick is rider QB for them 49ers. It ain't hard to see, Some awesome people hosting Marcus Katkin and Matt Dugal. You should be joining. Skinny or fat, short or tall, anyone can tune in to Blindside Football. Have a try, dude. Listen on iTunes or blindsidefootball.com too.